Welcome everybody to TubPreneurs. I'm your host, John Uplegger with Vision Consulting, helping businesses identify and communicate their values and vision so they can move forward with velocity towards their goals. I'm joined today by Tony Lackie with Northern Beat Entertainment. Tony has spent the last several years building up one of the premier DJing services in Northern Michigan and has expounded well beyond DJing. So Tony, welcome to the Tub.
Thanks, John. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Happy to be here. Beautiful
Same.
hot tub. Feels
Thank you.
awesome.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day for it too.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, Tony, can you give us kind of a high-level view of what it is that you do with Northern Beat? Because I know it goes beyond DJing. So what all does it encompass?
So, my main objective whenever I am working with a couple is a couple things. One, that they realize their vision, right? So they have an understanding of what it is that they want to do. Because although weddings are the primary bulk of what I do every event, or any kind of event, I should say. But especially in regards to weddings, a lot of couples will kind of have a vision for how they see their wedding going. And whether that began when they were young or it kind of came on later in life, they always have a vision, and making sure that they realize that vision and that I can kind of be the conduit between their vision and having everything run smoothly during the day of, in order to ensure that everything goes smooth.
Wow, I love that. So you're not just spinning tunes. You're up there really kind of being the MC of the event overall.
Yeah, and letting the guests know what is happening, right? Letting them know what is coming next. Maybe letting them know where to go. Kind of being that communicative middleman between what the couple wants done and double, triple checking with the other vendors that are working there to make sure that everything is in place. So we don't miss a beat. Things don't...
No pun intended,
yeah,
right?
No pun... Hey, there we go. So that way everything just operates smoothly.
I love that. Now, how did you get started with this? Because I know when I met you, you were really full-time in a different endeavor. And I think you had this as kind of a side hustle, maybe?
Yeah.
So kind of tell us a little bit about how you got started and really got it from, I mean, just starting as a side hustle to what it is today, where you've actually got a couple employees, you're doing tons of weddings. I'd love to hear how many and whatnot. So tell us a little bit about that journey so far.
So originally I was actually really heavy into production. And I was doing a lot of production. I was working at a recording studio. And around the time that my daughter was born, a buddy of mine said, have you ever considered DJing weddings? Because at the time, my daughter had just been born. We were kind of struggling heavily. We didn't have a whole lot of money. And I was really trying to make something work with the music. And I kind of thought about it, but it was one of those things where I was like, that can't be too much fun, because especially then I kind of pictured weddings as like this uptight event where, you hear this nightmare story of like bridezillas and brides that things just are never good enough for. And you kind of picture a wedding of like a bunch of little kids and grandparents. And I got into it. I tried it once and I just fell in love with it because it was nothing like I expected. Because a lot of weddings, a lot of the people just want to party. Like they want to party. And one thing I never realized is grandma and grandpa are usually gone after dessert is served anyways. And then the younger people are usually the one drinking, having a good time, And for everything that I had done in my life kind of leading up to it, because I'd put a lot of focus into performances, right? Because before I got into DJing weddings, I was a musician, I was producing, I was doing a lot of different stuff. And the stage performance, the microphone work, all of that was stuff that I was consistently critiquing myself on since I was probably like 15 or 16. And realizing that the natural talents that I had could be utilized in service of somebody else and really have their one day, the one day of their life that is intended to be as special as it can be, as personalized as it could be, and knowing that I could use my own skills and my own talents as a conduit to have that happen, I mean, it was just a no-brainer. But when I met you, I was working for a couple different businesses doing it. I hadn't started my own business yet.
I think we met originally at like ABC Warehouse.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken.
It was at the Lead Plan Marketing Open House is where I met you.
Oh, okay.
Because,
oh, yeah, and then I saw you later.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yep.
And then we got in lunch and we had talked about, I think at the time, First Payment Solutions or something like that. But it was... I was working for a couple other people, and I had begun kind of getting into some certain sales roles because when I first started DJing, because I started in 2015, that was when I first started DJing, I was working in granite countertops, and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't for me, and I really wanted to pursue something in sales, something where I could build relationships.
Okay.
So I went to ABC Warehouse, and then later went to Lead Plan. But when I met you, I was still working at ABC Warehouse, and I was working for other people and still hadn't yet built a business. And at the time, I didn't know if I wanted to.
Yeah.
You know, because I enjoyed doing it. I loved doing it. But the thought of like, you know, having to go out there, find my own clients, work with them, and actually building a business around it was something I wasn't sure if I really wanted to tackle. And then I started working at Lead Plan and figured it all out. So
you had to do all of that anyways at Lead Plan to do outside sales and actually figure it out, build those relationships like you said. And
exactly.
So do you kind of see that as the catalyst that kind of pushed you over the edge of going, hey, I actually really do enjoy this and I can do it and I could make something of my own?
Yeah, actually, in more ways than one too, because, you know, when I was at Lead Plan, a big part of what I did was building a relationship with business owners, evaluating their presence online, their website, their SEO, what keywords they rank for, kind of associating that and referencing that with some of their competitors, seeing what they could do differently, right, in order to gain the customer base that they wanted. And at the time, there were two companies that I was working for. One was Northern Michigan DJ.com. The other was My TC Weddings. And progressively over the years, I noticed that they were steadily having a decline in the amount of events that they were doing. And when I did some of that market research on their behalf to kind of evaluate the market and see where they were, you know, I asked them, is this something that you are intentionally doing? Because especially in the wedding space, less events does not always mean less success, you know, because you have a lot of different vectors from the price of a vendor to, you know, some vendors only want to work a certain amount of days out of the year, and that's their inventory because they put so much focus. So when I had that conversation with them, they were like, yeah, you know, we're just struggling. And I realized that a lot of it was due to their online presence, their website, it was outdated. And when you consider the age group of the people that are getting married, when they're millennials, sometimes even Gen Z, a little bit younger, you need to have a strong online presence.
Absolutely.
And I kind of pitched to both of them at one point, you know, why don't you let us build your website, do some of this. And I created this entire market strategy for them. So this is what we can do to kind of rebuild you and reposition you in the marketplace and do what you need to do. And neither of them wanted to bite. One was close to retiring, you know, where he was like, it just doesn't make sense for me to spend the money. And the other one had a lot of different fires or sticks in the fire, whatever the saying is. So it didn't work out. And that was when I'm like, why don't I give this a shot myself?
Right.
Why don't I take this market research? Because I developed an entire marketing plan. I said, why don't I just see if I can put all of this together for myself and see how that turns out. And that's ultimately how Northern Beat started.
So I love what you're saying here, and I hope you guys caught on to this, because what Tony's saying is he was working in a completely different industry from DJing with the marketing side of things, and he took what he learned at that different agency and applied it to his own business. And this is something I think a lot of people sometimes miss is they focus so much on, I got to be in the right industry, I got to do the right thing, blah, 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 I'm not passionate, whatever. But what they miss is all of our experiences become something that we can use in the future as we want to move towards an entrepreneurial endeavor. So as you're working at the 9 to 5 or the 10 to 2 or whatever it is for you, realize that that experience is starting to build the person that you need to be to go out and do an entrepreneurial endeavor and help you build how to become a better leader. Because before you can be a good leader, you need to be a good follower as well.
Yep.
So I love that. So you finally decided, what kind of made the switch in your mind as far as like go from part-time to full-time with the DJing? Because you started it part-time, correct? Northern Beat Entertainment, your own company.
Yeah. And it was really once I had gotten to a point where the revenue that I was making from Northern Beat exceeded the revenue that I was making at my day job. And even now, you know, although Northern Beat is a big focus of mine, I still do a lot with websites, you know. Although I'm freelancing now, I'm not working with a lead plan. I do a lot during the week with different clients that I pick up for web design and stuff like that. But the bulk of what I do is with Northern Beat. But it really just kind of came once I realized that the plan that I put together was working. I made a couple adjustments here and there along the way, because no matter how good of a marketing plan you have, if you don't make adjustments, it's not going to work, you know. So as I was kind of going along, I was kind of adjusting certain things. And once I realized, like, okay, this thing has staying power, you know, I'm able to make the revenue that I need to make. I'm able to book the future events that I need to book in order to keep that coming. And once all those pieces kind of started falling in place, that was when it was kind of a no-brainer at that point, you know?
Right, so you had the income coming in there. And I love what you said. I like to call it a PDCA process. Plan, do, check, and adjust. And that's exactly what you did, was you had your marketing plan. You had already put it together for somebody else. And you said, okay, we're going to do this. We got our plan. We're going to check it. We're going to adjust where needed. And we're just going to rotate that process to success. Yes. Now, I've noticed a lot, and you kind of alluded to this with some of the other companies that you were talking about with this marketing plan, is there's a lot of business owners that are hesitant to put dollars into marketing.
Yeah.
And obviously, I kind of have a feeling what you would say about that, but I'd love to hear the words from your mouth as far as how important is marketing for a new or even an existing business that's trying to grow.
The biggest thing is understanding that if you don't put that money in there, the chances of you getting that money back out are slim, right? So especially if a company is looking into, you know, if they should invest in marketing, don't look at it as an expense that you have. Look at it as an investment, right? Now, with that said, it's important to do your due diligence, right? Make sure that where you are putting that money is worth it, you know, is going to drive that return on investment for you in a quick fashion, or in a timely fashion, I would say, because marketing is never quick, but
right.
In a timely fashion, so that way you can make that return on investment in a time that makes sense for you. But ultimately, you know, I always tell people this: you have one of two options. You either, if you have more money than you do time, pay somebody to do it. If you have more time than you do money, figure out how to do it yourself. But understand that it does take a lot of research, but it's not rocket science, you know. Right. If anybody, any business owner, any entrepreneur can figure out the right elements and the right strategies to implement in their business, if they utilize the correct resources and were as hungry about marketing their business as they were performing their business.
Oh, I love that.
Right? Like me, I love going out. I love DJing. I love the energy that the crowd gives me.
Yeah.
But I love marketing my business just as much. Right? Because I'm also passionate about marketing, and I understand that in order for me to get that feeling from the crowd, I need to be marketing my business.
I love that. Guys, there were so many knowledge bubbles that Tony just laid out. And a few key takeaways that I'm going to mention here are the first thing he mentioned, which was if you have the money but you don't have the time, hire it out. And if you have the time but you don't have the money, figure it out and do it. And that's something I got to learn, because I hate the marketing side of things. I mean, even my social media, like I don't want to do social media is a free thing I can do pretty easily. But it's such a time suck, and I don't really enjoy it. But if I'm not at the point where I can afford to hire that out, you're right. You just got to figure it out, and that's what you got to do when you're starting a business. So
yes,
it works out so well with that. Now, as you were going through this process and getting started and everything.
Before you go on to that, think of it this way, right? Instead of framing it as, oh, I need to create a social media post, or I need to do this to market my business, look at it as, and I don't know about the legal implications of everything that you do with Vision Consulting, but maybe you can look at it as sharing success stories from the clients you are working with, right? Because if you're passionate about what you're doing, the easiest way to kind of take that step forward into marketing the business is just get passionate about sharing the results.
That's a great point. And that probably comes up to another way, because there's a lot of free ways that businesses can learn to market, right? And obviously social media is one. There's a little bit you can do with SEO that's not too complicated. But one thing that's probably pretty clear, and I've seen you use this on your stuff a lot, is reviews, right?
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about how important reviews are and how you go about to get those reviews from your clients as often as possible?
So the biggest thing, especially with local businesses, right? So Google has came out and said that one of the top 3 ranking factors is reviews, consistency of reviews and a rating of those reviews. And when somebody is looking up in Google and any whatever they are typing has local intent, right? Whether they put in a plumber near me or plumber in Traverse City, whatever it is, if it has local intent, then chances are they are going to see the Google Map 3-pack. And having reviews, consistent reviews. I don't mean like just getting 100 friends to leave a review on a business and calling it a day. I mean at least one review a month, minimum. Yeah. Shoot for one review a week if you can. That is one of the most valuable things that any small local business can do in order to grow, because one, it serves twofold. So one, it puts Google in your favor, or you in Google's favor, I should say, to where Google has a better chance of showing that business in search, as long as there's a couple other criteria, like they have to have their categories filled out appropriately on Google Business. They have to have all of their information consistent across the web, from phone number, punctuation in the business, address, all of that stuff. But it puts that business in favor of Google. So Google has an opportunity to show it in the results. But what it also does is it's a great way to establish trust once somebody finds you, right? So that way, if they find you, they're like, oh, this guy has 40 reviews from businesses that he's worked with, and he's helped kind of get that jump. Maybe I might give him a shot. Right. Because it's really that social proof that is driving today's economy, or today's marketing dollars, or businesses, I should say.
Well, and that's so true too, because I know for me, anytime that I'm looking at contacting, whether it be a local company, I mean, heck, if I'm buying a product on Amazon, I am looking consistently at reviews. Do they have a good review, or do they not have a good review? Yes. And so those are absolute gold for your business, and a free, easy way to get some traction with Google, as Tony talked about. And that's cool that they actually gave us that peek behind the curtain.
Yeah.
How do you go and get reviews?
So, one, you have to do a good job.
All starts with a good job, absolutely.
Yes. So, one, you have to deliver value, right? If you aren't delivering value, and what I mean by that is regardless of the price point that you charge in the market, whether you are on the low side, whether you're average or you're on the higher end, you have to provide that value where your client or your customer feels that they got more out of their money than they paid. So one, you have to do a good job. If you can establish that value, if what you are doing, your clients, your customers value, asking them, just taking that step. And I know so many businesses that don't do this because, they are afraid of getting annoying, or, they're like, oh, they'll leave a review if they like me that much. Baloney, they won't. They won't even think about it.
Right.
Unless you ask them. Just coming out and saying, hey, in my case, saying, we really enjoyed celebrating with you guys. Would you mind leaving us a review? And I always let my couples know, it helps us out a lot by helping future couples find me and giving them an idea of what it's like to work with me.
I love that.
So even letting them know why you are asking for a review, just say, especially if you are a business starting out, just saying, hey, I could really use a review because it would help me grow my business. I appreciate working with you. Would you mind doing it?
Absolutely.
That is a massive step that a lot of businesses just don't take.
Well, and I think it scares a lot of businesses too sometimes. So this idea of like, oh, I don't want to seem needy. I don't want to ask something of them. But the thing to remember here is, especially like Tony said, it starts with providing a great service.
Yeah.
If you're not providing a great service, you probably don't want to ask for reviews, and you probably need to reevaluate whether you should be in business or not.
Bingo.
But if you are doing a great job, realize that people want to help people. People want to see other people be successful, especially people that they've gotten to know, that they like, and that they trust. And if you're delivering that great service like Tony does for his clients, they're going to trust you. They're going to know you. They're going to like you. And they're going to want to help you in your endeavors as you grow as a business.
And on the flip side of that, I know businesses that are scared to ask a review because they're afraid that the job that they provided was mediocre and that person is going to leave them a 1-star review. Right. And it's not exclusive to any industry, but just getting over that fact and understanding that unless you take that step and ask, you never know what that client or what that customer is going to say. And one-star review is not going to tank a business.
Right.
A lot of business owners are afraid of getting one-star review. If it happens, it happens. Like, it's not going to drive you to bankruptcy. It's not going to bankrupt the business. So just let it go and get more confident with asking for reviews.
Yeah, if we could get as excited about our positive reviews as we do about our negative reviews, I mean, that would be phenomenal. Because I know, even working, when I worked for a cleaning company, I mean, we had over 100 5-star reviews. And we would get that one star once in a blue freaking moon. I mean, I think in all the reviews that we had, there was maybe 2.
And you guys had hundreds.
Hundreds, yeah.
Hundreds.
And it was like, don't focus on it,
Right.
And it's hard, right? Our brain goes to what could we have done differently? Is there something that we could have said? Is there something we could have done? Learn from it, yes, but at the end of the day, don't dwell on it. Just move forward. And if there was something that you learned from it, it's a win, even if they left a 1-star review.
Yeah.
It kind of adds a little bit of validity to it too, doesn't it? I mean, like if I'm looking at somebody and they have, let's say, 30 reviews and they're all 5 stars, I'm kind of like, okay, was this just the friends and family or what? But
exactly.
If you have, 100, 150 reviews and 95% of them are 5 stars, that's fine. You're still operating at a 4.8, 4.9 on Google. That looks great.
And ultimately, Google isn't going to penalize any business for getting one 1-star review.
Right.
And real people aren't going to penalize a business for having one 1-star review.
Right.
Because Google and everyday people know that people are people. Either you made a mistake, and in which case just comment on the 1-star review, kind of own it. Or, maybe that customer or that client was difficult to work with. There's millions of reasons, right? Having one 1-star review out of hundreds doesn't make you bad at what you do.
Well, and I love how Grant Cardone puts it, you got to have some haters, right?
Bingo.
You got to have some haters. That's actually how you're going to be, you're getting to a point of success, in business is when you start disrupting the market so hard that you get a couple haters and people that don't want to see you be successful because they're scared of what you're doing, or they feel bad about what they're not doing.
And you always have some jokester or whatever come in out of nowhere who isn't a customer, isn't a client, leaving a 1-star review on a business.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that means you're doing something right.
Now, what do you recommend? Because you mentioned like responding to those 1-star reviews and whatnot. Let's say you have that jokester, or I'll give you one scenario. We had one star review that was from an ex-employee's ex-boyfriend who randomly got on and said some bad things about the company. What do you think is a good way to respond to those?
Just utilizing it as an opportunity to receive feedback. Now, in that case, it's easy to respond and just say, we don't have you in our books as a paying customer or anything like that. With a lot of wedding specific businesses, I know that will often be the reply is, hey, we don't even know who you are because we don't have you in our books. And that happens a lot, actually. Yeah. But utilizing that 1-star review as an opportunity to get feedback, just ask them, what is it that we did that warranted the 1-star review? Because we would be happy to change it.
Yeah.
Because because most businesses, and a lot of people think it's just kind of like a saying, or maybe they don't mean it. Most small businesses are genuinely invested in delivering the highest quality that they can to their clients or customers, whoever they work with, right?
Absolutely. I think that's why we get into business, and this has come up multiple times on the podcast. It's the idea of we want to serve people. We want to help people. Yes. We have talents. Like Tony mentioned this at the start. He found that talents that he had, natural tendencies that he excelled in, was something that he could bring to the marketplace in a positive way. And so taking those things and really looking at it from a standpoint of how can I help? What can I do to make this better? I agree. I think that's what the majority of business owners feel.
Bingo.
So as you're going through this and you're getting started and you're making this move and everything, what do you think was your biggest challenge that you had to overcome as you were setting out to go from employee to business owner?
The biggest challenge that I had, especially in the beginning, was just financing myself. Because even when I was working at the marketing agency, I was working a commission job, and right around the time that I really got serious about launching Northern Beat Entertainment, I was a lot less focused on filling my pipeline as I was about hanging out with the web development guys,
right?
The guys that were doing the strategies, the guys that were building the websites in WordPress and doing all of this stuff just so I could pick their brain and just look over their shoulder and figure out how the heck they did this.
Yeah.
And that was my primary focus at the time. So, a lot of the struggle was just financing it and getting the capital that I needed to be able to build it to the way that I wanted to. And a lot of that was just, one step at a time, getting one event, performing that event, taking some of that money, reinvesting it, and then just continuously reinvesting into the business as I got more events and I got more clients and I grew from there.
So basically you were using the cash that was coming in from these events. You weren't going off and living hard on it. You were grabbing some of that money and investing it back into the business. And I think there's a book by Grant Cardone called The Power of Broke. And it gets into that. This idea of, as you're starting the business, you don't need to go out and get all the things.
No.
The podcast is a great example of this, because obviously, like this podcast, we haven't monetized yet. We will. But I could have went out and spent thousands of dollars
bought
getting
a Sony
all the
Alpha camera, a giant bunch of condenser, or SM7Bs kind of sticking out the side.
But instead, I said, okay, what can I use right now? Even when we have the camera snafu, and I was looking at what could I do? Sure, I could have went out and bought a new camera, and then I realized, well, shoot, I have a camera sitting here, and is it going to give me as good a quality as a fantastic camera? No. But guess what? It gives me good enough quality that I can start producing videos. And so start where you're at right now. And as you get clients, as you gain traction, that's when you can use those funds to help grow.
Bingo.
I think Jimmy from the Wash Doctor mentioned this last week too. When he got started,
yeah, because he started in a rusty truck. I heard that.
A rusty, broke down truck.
Yep.
I mean, he didn't even want to put his name on.
Yeah.
But the reality,
had to get a tetanus shot just to step in there.
Yeah, you had to get in there, and he had to start doing the work.
Yep.
Doing the work. So I love that. So
and it worked out too, because one thing I wasn't really in a position to borrow a ton of money because my credit wasn't the greatest, but I also didn't want to, and I'm glad that I didn't, because the year that I started was right before everything with coronavirus happened. And if I had been more focused on, maybe taking out a loan to buy the latest equipment and all this other stuff, then I would have just been sitting around for a year having to pay that off instead of just taking some of the money that was coming in and then reinvesting it into the business.
Yeah. And of course, you never want to get to a point where you default on a loan too.
Right.
So it's kind of one of those things, like when you're starting a business, you don't have to go out. Most businesses, you don't have to go out and get a huge loan and have this line of credit or whatnot. Just work with what you got. Start with where you're at. And then as you grow and as you start to build up your clientele and you build up your finances, then start to buy things as you go forward so that you're actually building a sustainable business that's not going to go bankrupt next year.
Bingo.
So it's interesting you brought up COVID, because it's kind of one of those things that every business had to adapt differently to that. So you're starting this DJing business, and all of a sudden COVID hits, and no events are allowed.
Nope.
What do you do? What are you feeling, and how did you adapt to that?
It sucked. Because I had launched my business. So when did everything shut down? March 2020, right?
Yeah.
I had started my business in October of 2019.
Wow.
So that was when my website went live, and I really started pushing my business, and I started enacting that marketing plan. And the thing about it too, so I launched the website, and within 3 months, mind you, I had more bookings on the calendar than both of the guys that I used to work for.
Wow.
So I launched the website. I put some pay-per-click ads on Google behind it. I ran a promotion on Facebook, and those were kind of my main two marketing endeavors, other than like getting reviews and creating posts on Google Business. And from October to probably that January, I had booked about 27, 28 events.
Wow.
And both of the guys that I was working for at the time one had 23 and the other had like 18. So it was showing that what I was doing was working. But then as COVID happened, cancellation after cancellation after cancellation, because it wasn't even that people were canceling because they were breaking up or anything else. It was because legally, by law, they could not do their weddings.
Right.
And it was tough, And in that case, I refunded the couples that were canceling, and just made it right. And that's really all that you can do, But it was tough. But it was just kind of about, all right, understanding that it's going to pass. We're going to get over this. And sooner or later, once we are done and COVID is gone, people are going to want to party again.
Right.
And that did happen. So
what did you do during that year then that we were shut down? Did you ramp up marketing? Did you focus somewhere else, or how did you kind of work through that? I
shifted a lot of my focus to two places. One, it was focusing on freelancing or doing the freelance web design stuff that I do now. Right. So during that time, I was picking up other businesses that saw the success that I was having with Northern Beat. And because of that, realized like, okay, his website looks good. It's messaging appropriately to attract his ideal client. It's optimized for conversions. Let me see if he could do the same for me. So I kind of began doing that to make some money. And then another part of it was basically revamping the brand itself because at that point I had a little bit more money, so I could put more money into really branding the business and making sure that it reflected appropriately. I built in this entire online planning portal because, kind of like I was saying, millennials and Gen Z, we are the first generation to literally be raised with the internet.
Right.
So we are used to being connected. I mean, we go to pay a ticket online.
Yep.
Like, we don't go to the courthouse. You do everything online. You pay your electric bill. You do your banking online. So I already knew, like, a lot of the couples are going to want to plan online because they're not going to want to have me email them a wedding planner, write it down, and give it to me in a meeting or mail it back to me. So I started focusing on building out. I found a great CRM that I use. It's called DJ Event Planner. And I focused a lot on building that out. So that way, my ideal client was having the experience that they wanted to have, and planning was easier for them.
Absolutely. That makes so much sense. So utilizing that time that you couldn't work in your business to work on your business and really help make sure that you're getting everything taken care of.
Bingo.
So 2021 comes around, everything opens up. Tell us a little bit about what happened then and the growth that you've had over the last now 1.5 years.
Yeah.
Post-COVID.
Post-COVID. So yeah, once everything opened back up, it was awesome. We got right back to doing events. Slowly, my prices have steadily increased. And whenever my prices increase, I'm very cautious of my closing rate, and I keep a very close eye. And that's probably due to the marketing background, because you don't want to price yourself out of the market to where you're charging too high of a price and nobody is hiring you. But at the same time, it is a supply and demand thing, right? So my prices have increasingly gone up. I've been doing more and more events, and last year especially, like I said, all of the money, dang near all of the money that I made from those events just went right back into the business.
So, and then now you've got, how many employees do you have now?
So right now I've got one. He's my assistant.
Okay.
We're looking at possibly bringing somebody else in. The biggest thing with that is just finding people, and making sure that they are adequate enough in order to represent what I do, because the biggest struggle I have is letting go, right? Like, I want to be able to do more events, but I also would rather die before I sacrifice the integrity of those events.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I want whoever it is that does those events to be personal, to be energetic, to help the couple in allowing things to flow. And it's difficult finding that person, but what I have focused on is finding different avenues that I can add more revenue. Adding a photo booth, adding different uplighting options, enhancing the lighting of the space, so there's different ways that you can grow the business, increase revenue, other than, in my case, other than taking on extra events.
This is a great point, because it's another thing that we've talked a lot about on the podcast is just this, looking for those verticals.
Yeah.
So where Tony started off as pretty much offering DJing services, now it's really the whole event service of, we're going to do DJing, we're going to bring in a photo booth, we're going to have the uplighting, we're going to do all these extra things that for him, he's already there, he's already doing it. It doesn't cost a whole lot more of his time, money, or energy to implement these things, but he's able to bring in additional revenue through that. I loved your photo booth, man. We just, my wife and I just attended a wedding that Tony was the MC at, and it was awesome, man. I mean, the uplights were there, and they were really setting the mood for the whole feeling of everything. You had the photo booth, you had the music pumping. I mean, it was a great time. It was a lot of fun. So whatever it is in your business that you do, look for those laterals and those verticals. And those are things that are right within about 3 feet of what you typically do, that you can add in to produce additional revenue stream.
Yep.
So as you went to hire this employee, I know that hiring is one of those things that scares the daylights off of entrepreneurs and business owners in general. And I think for a lot of the reasons that you just mentioned of, I want to make sure that we're bringing in quality people. I want to make sure they're going to represent the brand right. I want to make sure that we're going to continue to deliver on certain metrics and everything. How did you start looking for that right person?
It actually just kind of happened, to be honest with you, because it was through BNI. Naomi. She was a member in our BNI chapter for a while. And I had mentioned, because at that time because last year especially was a bit of I wouldn't say a struggle, but it was an adjustment, right? Because here I am, I just started my DJ business, and I'm going out DJing every single weekend, if not double times every single weekend, right? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then for Saturday. And it's taxing on the body.
Sure.
Hauling around the equipment, setting everything up. So here I am. I started my business in 2019. I couldn't do anything in 2020 because of COVID, so I was just sitting around because coronavirus decided to come right before wedding season. So last year was the first year that I was actually able to book my own events, have my calendar full of my own events, and execute those events, because it is very different being the one that books the event than just being the guy that shows up. Like when I was working for the other guys, I would literally just show up the day of, have no communication with a couple, just walk in there and do
your thing.
Maybe I will help them set up. Maybe I'll just walk in there and it'll already be set up. It was always kind of a hit or miss, but when you are the one booking those events, the entire process from planning everything and making sure that the songs are right, making sure you have the timeline completed before you go in there, making sure that you have the photographer's phone number in case you need to call them, making sure that you have equipment staged in all the areas. Like, that was new to me, especially not for a single event, but for as consistent as I was doing it, it was very new to me. So I had put out in our BNI group, I'm looking for somebody to come out with me, lend a hand, hang out, just whatever, and her husband, Jody, started coming out, and he's been incredibly valuable to Northern Beat, especially when we go out on weddings. He loves taking photos. So he'll just go around and take photo after photo. Some weddings we go to, I won't say which ones, but there's sometimes he takes better photos than the photographers. And he's just using his phone, Yeah. But he's incredibly talented at capturing a moment, and he'll just take a bunch of photos and then he'll post them on social media. You know? And that is valuable in terms of creating that social proof, putting that content out there online for people to find. And especially when you consider social media and tagging a venue, right? Then you're supercharging it.
This is so great too, because again, thinking about marketing options that you can do that don't cost you really any money, photos is such a big one.
It is.
It's so important, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because actually, due to Matt Bullock being in my tub, Matt brought out one of his guys who just literally took a couple of pictures. They looked fantastic, and I just sat there and went, why am I not getting pictures every time I have somebody in the tub? So now I have my wife come out, and she'll take a couple photos at the start, just so we can kind of capture the moment, if you will, and have some of that social proof to show. So I love that. So figure out a way. Maybe it's your spouse. Maybe if you have an employee, having them do it. Maybe it's yourself. Or maybe you just have a friend who can come out and capture a couple of photos of in the moment, and you give them a couple bucks for their time. But being able to have that, again, it's like Tony mentioned, it's that social proof. It's putting it on the social media. Now you have something that you can give a little more than a generic still image that you bought offline.
And then when you post it to social media, you could, when you post that photo, tag the person in it and then tag their business. That way you are promoting their business.
Right.
Anybody that likes their page has an opportunity to see it. Anybody that is friends with them have an opportunity to see it. And you're just expanding your reach. And those are the things that developing those habits is really healthy for entrepreneurs, because it's really just about getting into the habit of doing these things that allow us to market our business without having to spend money on ad dollars or pay a marketing agency, and just developing those good habits to market and get that reach.
I love that. And some of you too, you'll have a business where you can do before and after shots, which always look great. I know when we had Jimmy in the tub, one of the things I love about his business is it's instant gratification, in that when you power wash something, man, you see it before and you see it after.
Yeah.
And with Tony, like when you look at the before and after of when he does his uplighting is just phenomenal. I loved what you showed with, I think you were at the Delamar recently, and you had the
it looked so good.
Gosh, man, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
So make sure that you're capturing those moments on a camera somehow, so that you can put them out there onto the interwebs and help create more of that social proof that's going to continue to bring dividends over and over and over again to you.
And in my case, and then like with DJs, right? You know, that picture with Delamar, I tag Delamar. Every venue that I DJ at, I tag them in the posts. You know, like especially if it's a venue like Haggerty Center or Delamar, where it just looks unbelievable with the uplighting. Taking that photo and that video, usually with uplighting, I take video so I can kind of get a pan of around the room, but I'll take that video, mention how beautiful it looks, and tag the venues, and they love it because it is showcasing their venues in the best light possible. Everything's decked out, it's beautiful, it looks phenomenal, and I get an opportunity to tag them in the post, show off my uplighting, and it comes back, man, you know.
Yeah, it's just always having that mindset of who can you help with anything that you do is really what it comes down to. So the venue, the photographer, the guest that you have with you in the hot tub, whatever it is, finding ways to tag those folks and just get the word out on them and on you more and more and more is so important in today's age.
Bingo.
Now, a lot of what we focus on here is for beginning entrepreneurs, new businesses, people that are kind of taking those first steps. So as you think about that, what would be kind of your biggest piece of advice for folks as they're getting started in their business endeavor?
The biggest thing is, I see this a lot, right? Kind of going back to the conversation that we had about when I was starting, I would make the money from the events and reinvest that money. I see a lot of new businesses and new entrepreneurs spending so much more money than they need to instead of working with what they've got. You know, figure out what you have and figure out what you can do with what you have and how to work with it, and figure out how you can provide value with what you already have. And then get the jobs and then reinvest using that. Like I see a lot of businesses, you know, a lot of entrepreneurs that will go out and DJ specific, right? We'll stick with DJing, but like, you know, I'll see DJs that are just starting out their businesses, maybe have like 5 events on the calendar. They have a good logo. They haven't really built a website yet, but they'll go out and spend $5,000 on a new pair of speakers when they had a decent pair of speakers, but they weren't brand new. Or they'll spend $4,000 on a DJ booth or on a new controller. And it's like, if what you have now works, and especially with DJing, man, because a lot of the value is in our talent, right? It's how we engage with the crowd. It is how we work with the couple, how personal we are. It's how we speak on the microphone. It is the music that we play. Nobody gives a crap about what you're using behind the booth, you know? And figuring out how to work with what you have and then getting those jobs lined up. Like getting 40 or 50 events booked is a lot more valuable than going out and buying a new piece of equipment.
This is so true. I love that you focused on that aspect, because the reality is, if there's something that you're thinking about doing as an entrepreneurial endeavor, chances are you've done it in the past, and chances are you have a lot of the tools that you need right now to go out and do it. the one that comes to mind right now is landscaping, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a landscaper or you want to start a landscaping company, you've already been landscaping, chances are you probably have some of the base tools you need, a lawnmower, a weed whacker, a shovel, those sorts of things. Maybe it's not the prettiest lawnmower. Maybe it's not the most efficient lawnmower. Maybe it's not the best weed whacker on the market. But at the end of the day, if you're able to do a good job with those things right now anyway, go out and do it, and then reinvest the money to actually get some better equipment. But do it smartly as opposed to just willy-nilly grabbing the best stuff.
Bingo.
Like Tony mentioned, don't go spend $5,000 on that you don't have on equipment that you don't necessarily need yet.
Bingo. Exactly. And yeah, it might take you a little bit longer, like going to your lawnmower analogy. It might take you a little longer with that lawnmower, you know, but that doesn't really matter until you're doing so many yards, right? Or until you hit that point that you are mowing so many yards that you need it to be faster in order to fit more in your schedule. That is the difference.
That's such a good point there too, because I think about it and I see this a lot with business owners is we're so focused on save time, save time, save time, save time. And sometimes it's like you have enough time that you don't need to save it necessarily.